Hi beautiful souls, it's Tan here today talking about the Uranus transit, and that's in Taurus, and how that's going to affect the 12 rising signs. So this is actually a requested video from one of you guys out there, but it's actually a really good request because it reminds me that I should be making this video since May of 2018 last year when Uranus first went into Taurus, but my excuse is that I didn't have a YouTube channel back then, so I couldn't. But then actually Uranus kind of went retrograde into the sign of Aries again around November. So that's also another excuse. But now it's going direct again, and it's going to be in Taurus again on March 6th of 2019, and will stay in Taurus until April 26th of 2026. Oh, a lot of sixes there. So yeah, Uranus does transit one sign for like a very long time. It's going to be in Taurus for another 8 years. So this transit is going to have a really big impact on your life, and you're going to notice a big change in your life the moment that the transit is over. So when I think of Uranus, I kind of think about it as being a wild card, because you never know what you're going to get with Uranus. You know there's going to be sudden changes, but you don't know if it's going to be for the better or for the worse. And there is no clue, there's no pattern that you can see that's going to predict whether, which direction it's going to go. It's just going to happen all of a sudden, and it's going to be like tearing down something in order to make way for something better to come, something that's going to better the society, if you know what I mean. So I think of Uranus as being pretty brilliant, but at the same time pretty catastrophic. Uranus asks you to challenge the status quo as much as it forces you to either change or you're gonna have to be changed. But remember that it's for the betterment of our society as a whole. So let's talk a little bit about the sign of Taurus. Now Taurus doesn't have very much in common with Uranus at all. The qualities of Taurus is that it's really fixed. It doesn't actually like change. It does like the rhythm of things, and it likes the rhythms to go slowly and flow naturally. It likes the natural rhythm of the way that things work. It's harmonious, and because it's ruled by Venus, right? So Taurus is balance, and it is really concerned with the relationships of the people around you as much as it is concerned with meeting its 5 senses. Taurus also rules things like your values, your approach to money, the way that you make money, and so on. Taurus is also an earth sign, so it rules our, earth right here. It's one of the earthiest signs. It's very much about being in touch with the earth. So when you put these two together, we kind of have a theme of a balance, a theme of needing to balance between progress, Uranus, and tradition, Taurus. So I really see this theme as being, how can we bring the traditions that we have into the 21st century? How can we change the traditions to adapt and suit better for the 21st century? First, talk a little bit about the general worldly themes of Uranus being in Taurus, not for specific individuals, but for the earth as a whole. So we do see things like, people having different ideas or having new ideas about how they want to use cash, moving towards having electronic cash. But remember that electronic cash eventually only benefits certain groups of people. That's kind of what Uranus is. When we have progress, sometimes progress doesn't really benefit everyone. And as much as Aquarius and Uranus really strives for equality, it's hard because the society is not made equal, So that's one of the challenges that comes with Uranus. We can see certain financial systems that might have to be torn down in order to make way for better systems. And on a collective level, we're going to see changes in the things that we value and the way that we use our money and make money. So of course, as Taurus is the sign of the earth, it's the earthiest sign, we can also see sudden changes within the earth. Wild weather patterns, for example. And this is pretty interesting and scary, but it's interesting because that's the way the earth is supposed to be. The earth is not supposed to just be constant, it's supposed to change. I'm here in Thailand, and there's been lots of news about earthquakes here in Thailand, which, you know, we never have. They're not big earthquakes or anything, but they cause buildings to shake a little. You know, they're kind of low on the Richter scale. But, you know, this never really goes in the news in Thailand. And we've also got this massive pollution problem here. If you've watched the news, you've heard of PM 2.5. It's pretty dangerous when you go out here in Bangkok. You gotta put on a mask and things like that. And, you know, these are some of the themes that's happening with Uranus and Taurus. But the lesson here is that we've got to take a new approach to how we think we can solve earthly problems. It's like our wake-up call, almost. You know, because Aquarius and Uranus is the sign of the collective, and it's about knowledge and, you know, consciousness. So we can really see that these events are happening because it's forcing us as a collective to reassess our consciousness about Earth, you know, the way that we've approached the solutions that we have for the issues of the environment. And this can also be translated into the consciousness of, let's say, you know, the meat industry and how, you know, that's kind of destroying the environment. We can see more people, you know, eating less meat, just, you know, just to benefit the environment more. So these are themes that can be happening. So now it's time for the interesting part, which is when I talk about each of the 12 rising signs and how Uranus in Taurus is going to affect you. Okay guys, so when you're looking at this for your rising sign, I would recommend that you have like your natal chart in front of you and you see exactly where Uranus is and which house that's in. Alright, because it might not be in the house that I specify as the house for your rising, because if you're born in like a late degrees of that rising sign, Uranus could be transiting the house before. For example, like I have a Gemini rising, but I'm like a very late degrees Gemini rising. I'm like a 26 degree Gemini rising. So Uranus should actually be transiting my 12th house. That's where it should be for the Gemini rising because it's in Taurus. Gemini is right before Taurus, right? But because I'm born in late degrees of Gemini, Uranus will actually be transiting my 11th house before it goes into my 12th house later on in the transit. And it's gonna stay in my 12th house, in Taurus, in the 12th house, just a little bit only. And then it moves into Gemini and it stays longer in my 12th house. I don't know if that's making any sense, but okay, I'll kind of help you along as we do this. Okay, so let's talk about the Aries rising first. So with Aries rising, you have Uranus and Taurus transiting your 2nd house, or if you're born in late degrees of Aries, it could be your 1st house. So the 2nd house is about values, money, sensuality. It's very Taurus in itself, right? So for the past, let me say 7 to 8 years, Uranus would have been transiting your 1st house, the house of the self. So you've kind of been going through a change within yourself. You've been kind of trying to find your individuality. And now we see the themes of how you're going to put this individuality and apply it to your values, into your self-worth. Your values about money and how to make money could change. You could begin to think about the price that you'd have to pay in order to get financial safety. So for example, you know, maybe in the past, let's say you worked at a library, all right, and it was a stable job, you were a librarian, you had an income, you know, every month, but you were not satisfied. So now you're thinking about, you know, is it worth it to do this in order just to have financial security? And with Uranus coming in, it's going to ask you to change that. So you might begin to move towards your soul purpose more and rely less on financial security. So you might say, all right, I'm going to start my own freelance business. I might not get a steady income every month right away or ever, but you know, I'm going to get some income, and then at the same time I'm going to be more in alignment with my soul purpose. So you're going to kind of see that happening with the Aries rising. So the lesson here really is that it's okay to have financial instability as long as you are doing what is of worth to you and what is of your true value. But of course, we're going to be doing this in a very Taurus-like manner because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. So, you know, when you're doing this, you're going to have to take into account your relationships with the people around you and trying to maintain harmony with that. And you're going to have to do it consistently, work on it, and watch, you know, your own rhythms happening. All right. So with the Taurus rising, we've got Uranus going into your first house, or it could be in your 12th house if you're in a late degrees Taurus rising. So yeah, so the first house is the house of yourself, your individuality, and your physical appearance. So we can really see the Taurus rising trying not to conform to the societal norms of what constitutes beauty or what constitutes, you know, good looks. You might begin to drastically want to change that, you know, just to challenge the perception of beauty, or just challenge, you know, yourself and the way that you've always looked. You might feel that, you know, the way that I look right now is not expressing who I really am. For the past 7 to 8 years, Uranus would have been transiting your 12th house. So that means that, you know, there's been a lot of unconscious awakenings inside of you about who you really are as a person. So now that it comes into your first house, you're not afraid to bring that out into your physical appearance, to embody that in your body. There is also the need to kind of break free from everything just to be free. But you have to think about what is the price that you're willing to pay in order to be free. You know, are you going to take people along with you on this journey? Is it worth it to cut off some relationships in order to have your freedom? And when it's in the sign of Taurus, it's asking you to slowly take your time and consider other people. You know, you don't necessarily have to cut them off, but you might consider how you can still keep them in the picture while still having your freedom. Okay, so for the Gemini rising, Uranus is going to be moving into in Taurus in your 12th house. But if you're born a late Gemini rising degree like I do, it's going to be transiting your 11th house first for the most part before it goes into your 12th house. So the 12th house is the house of the subconscious, the collective unconscious, dreams, and spirituality. So during this transit, times of retreat and solitude are the times when you are going to have the most innovative ideas, where you are going to be able to think clearly and have your best insights. So you might just kind of have dreams, because the 12th house is the house of the subconscious, and when we dream, it's our subconscious talking to us. So these dreams might bring you certain awakenings about, you know, whatever that's going on in your life. It would be a good idea to listen to them and to look into them a little bit, just for this, you know, period, 7 to 8 year period. Yeah, suddenly you may just know what your values are by listening to your dreams. There might also be a bit of a curiosity about spirituality, but you want to try to find scientific proof for spiritual concepts. And during this time, you're going to try to find a balance between these two things, you know. So, you know, if you're interested in, like, let's say meditation or something, you know, you might want to look into how meditation actually works scientifically and what it's doing to our bodies and things like that. But the 12th house is also the house of, you know, our interconnectedness with the cosmos. So you are being asked to discover what the evolutionary limitations are of holding on to or clinging to your individuality, Uranus. And you will find that when you cling on to your individuality, you cling on to the fact that this is me, this is who I am so much. You are losing connection with the cosmos, with the divine. So it's asking you to see yourself as a no thing without your ego. It's dissolving your ego when Uranus comes here. So you're going to be faced with a pretty empty time where you're kind of like, I'm actually nothing. I'm just a energy in this body. I'm going to die one day, you know. And with that, you'll come to the realization that you can't be anything because you are nothing. It's going to feel weird at first, and it's going to feel pretty dark, but it's pretty enlightening to discover this. There can also be a theme of your hidden talents bursting out, because that 12th house is also the house of the hidden talents. So whatever it is that you're actually good at, but you've never seen yourself doing, you never realized you were good at it, you're just gonna awaken that, and you can bring some very genius creations into the world by tapping into your hidden talents. With the Cancer rising, we have Uranus going into your 11th house, but if you're late degrees, it could be in your 10th house first before it moves into your 11th house. So the 11th house is the house of Aquarius. It's the house of Uranus itself. It's the house of groups, hopes and your wishes, and the humanity and the society. So for the past 7 to 8 years, Uranus would have been transiting your 10th house, which means that you would have had some awakenings when it comes to your career choices. You might have had an abrupt change in your careers due to certain realizations, whatever that might be for you. Maybe you realize that this career is not benefiting the society like you would have hoped that it would. So you realize that when it moves into the 11th house, that we sometimes change our minds suddenly and abruptly when it comes to our goals and our hopes and our wishes. And that's okay, you know? You had put value in this purpose, but it doesn't work anymore. You're gonna change that, and it's okay, you know? For example, you might have worked in the government, but you realize that the government is not supporting the system right now. It's not supporting the people as a whole, and that sucks. So you're gonna have a drastic change, and you're gonna look at, all right, I've got to make my hopes and my wishes as a part of my career if possible, you know? But what's likely to happen is that people are gonna first think you're a little bit crazy. The people that you surround yourself with, they're gonna think you're a bit crazy to do this. They're gonna think like, why are you doing it, you know? They don't see things the way that you do. They don't have the awakening that you've had about your place in the world. So, but because Uranus is in Taurus, it's not going to be as extreme. You're not going to be as that crazy. You might even seem attractive to people because of your craziness, for example, because Taurus is ruled by Venus, right? So it's okay, because what the lesson here is the lesson here is that you are asked to do this, step into a new goal, because you are going to be able to find like-minded people there. When you connect with people, even through the internet, 11th house rule the internet, you can really, it's a really good time to be expanding your interactions with groups of people around the internet, and that's where you're gonna find a lot of like minds. So in this 7 to 8 years, these kinds of connections are gonna come to you, and you're gonna be like, wow, I finally found where I belong. I'm crazy to those people, but here I belong. So for the Leo rising, Uranus and Taurus is going to be transiting your 10th house. If you're born at later degrees of Leo than Leo rising, then it could be in your 9th house. Look at your chart to find out. So the 10th house is the house of your reputation, social status, your calling. So the midheaven is put up there. Okay, so it's like your calling. For the past 7 to 8 years, Uranus would have been transiting your 9th house before it comes here in the 10th. That means that in the past 7 to 8 years, you would have had a certain change in beliefs about your culture. So the culture that maybe you grew up in, you finally have awakened and you see it for what it really is, and you realize that, oh, I don't fit in there. So you might have moved a little bit. You might have traveled away from, the place that you currently were in the past 7 to 8 years because of a difference in beliefs. And now you've stepped into your role in the world to make a contribution. And you might see some career changes, moving away from that culture that you were in, so that you can step into your contribution through your career, okay? Your real contribution through your careers. These are usually good career changes. Sudden career changes are not likely to be very bad. They're usually good. So But there can be a certain lesson here where you're asked to think a little bit about what is the price that you're willing to pay for your reputation? What's the price you're willing to pay to fit in, so to speak? So, you know, you might have wanted to have a certain image in the public, but then throughout this transit, you'll finally realize that it's not worth it to put up an image out there that is not really reflective of who I am. What's the point, you know? Be careful that your reputation might also come crashing down if you are not in alignment with your true soul purpose. So for the Virgo rising, we have Uranus coming into your 9th house. It could also be the 8th house if you're born in the later degrees of a Virgo rising, so you want to check that. So 9th house is house of beliefs, the higher mind, expansion and growth. You begin during this transit, you're going to begin to question the assumptions and the beliefs of our cultures. You know, why is it that we define our culture with religion and not humanity? You know, why do we say that, oh, when a person is from this culture, you must take on this religion and that's who you are? Why is it not that we are just human beings? You're going to sort of think about these and question these things. And because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, you might also question the fact that why are we not defining, why do we not have a belief? Why is it that we have a belief in religion but not in nature itself? You know, Taurus is so down to earth, it's bringing you down. It's like we should devote ourselves, we should devote ourselves to nature. Nature is more divine than anything else. There could also be a bit of a relocation. You might decide to move because you no longer can move towards your soul purpose within the confines of your culture. So you want to expand on your beliefs so that you can make a real contribution. You might feel that your mind is now too narrow for the growth of your soul. So you're going to need to expand that, or that, you know, your mind is now too narrow and you can't contribute to the societal changes that you hope to make, so you're going to need to expand your mind. So for the Libra risings, we have Uranus moving into your 8th house. It could also be moving to your 7th house if you're born at later degrees of a Libra rising, but it could affect both of these houses, so you want to check that. So the 8th house is the house of intimacy, deep bonding, joint finances, transformation, the occult. So for the past 7 to 8 years, Uranus would have been transiting your 7th house, which means that it was not a good time for marriage. You know, if there's been any disruptions in your marriage or in your relation, like one-to-one relationship with another person over the past 7 to 8 years, Uranus was in the 7th house, and that's what it's doing. So what happens is you might have broken a bond, a contract. Mostly it's gonna be a marriage because marriages are a contract, but it could be a very, you know, close one-to-one relationship. So you might have broken that off, and now you realize that you need to look inwards. You know, you need to do some shadow work in order to figure out what went wrong and what can I do to change so I don't repeat this pattern in the future. So then it comes into the 8th house, and we're doing a lot of shadow work. This Uranus coming into this house, the 8th house, is going to awaken a lot of your repressed desires. It could even be sexual, all right? But it's ultimately asking you to reassess whether these desires that you are repressing is worth repressing, because sometimes our society limits us from fully expressing ourselves. They think that certain things are taboo, but it's actually not. There's actually no reason why they should be. It's just the society's perspective. So you're really going to question that, and you're not afraid. You can really dig deep and just bring that out, and you're not afraid to bring it out. And if you do bring this side of you out, you're going to find that you will transform and you're going to change completely. All right? Because the 8th house is also the house of intimacy, there could be a sudden urge to merge and bond with somebody. But it could be a bonds made, bond broken. It could be a very deep, intimate bond made, and then it's like, psh, it's broken. And then it merges again, and then psh, it's broken. Uranus is so sudden. So the lesson here really is how do we take intimacy, and how do we find a constructive way of approaching intimacy? And with Uranus, the constructive way is that instead of bonding for the sake of raw urges to bond, how can we use our higher consciousness to bond with somebody? You know, how can we find like minds and bond through that rather than just some raw urges to bond? Okay. So for the Scorpio rising, Uranus is going to be moving into your 7th house, but it could also be moving into your 6th house if you are later degrees of a Scorpio rising, so you want to check your chart for that and see where Uranus is. So the 7th house is the house of marriage, partnerships, and contracts. So with Uranus moving here, I'm going to tell you right off that the next 7 to 8 years is probably not the best time to suddenly be signing a contract, or really to be signing any contract right now. Because there can be a sudden tearing of them down, all right? The lesson here really is that how can we reassess the idea of marriage in the 21st century? You know, it's not, marriage in the 21st century is not going to be like it was in the 19th century or even the 20th century. You know, the society has changed. The progress has, you know, come all the way. But, you know, what about marriage? Shouldn't marriage progress along with the progress of the society? It's something that you can really think about when Uranus comes here. And if you are to make it work, if you are to make any bonds work, you're gonna have to think about how you can make it unconventional. So Uranus is all about unconventionality, you know? So you're gonna find that it might be better off if you get married, but you, let's say, live in separate houses, or you get married, but you sleep in different rooms, or maybe you get married, but you don't have kids, or something like that. Something that is a little bit more catered to your soul growth rather than the society, all right? Or maybe it just means that if you're in a relationship, then it might mean that you just need a bit of space, all right? And I know this because I have Uranus in my 7th house, all right, in my natal chart, not transit, but in my own natal chart. Not the best place to have Uranus, but like I said, you might find that you need a bit of space, but you have to really think about, you know, what is the price that you're willing to pay for your space and your freedom, all right? Are you willing, you know, are you going to lose this person just because you want that space? Or can you find a balance, you know? And you're gonna have to do this you're gonna have to do this by following the nature of things, because Uranus is, after all, in the sign of Taurus. Sagittarius rising, Uranus is going to be moving into your 6th house, or it could be transiting your 5th house if you are born at later degrees of Sagittarius rising. So you want to check your chart to see where that is. So the 6th house is the house of daily routines, health, work, the working environment, and perfection, and also your skills, all right? So this is not such a bad place to have Uranus transiting, actually, compared to all the other houses, because all it's asking you to do is to question your routine and the way that you've been doing your routine. So because Uranus really tears things down, right? But you know, the 6th house is just about all these details, so it's easier to tear them down. It's not like you're tearing down your belief system or you're tearing down a relationship. You know, you're just changing up your routine. So it's not so bad. For example, you know, you might think, oh, I've been cleaning my bathroom this way. You know, how can I clean my bathroom differently? You might also experience, but I think on a more extreme, heavy level, you might experience some drastic body changes, you know. You might suddenly get sick, it could happen, accidents, or maybe all you need to do is just have a new exercise or eating, you know, routine. The lesson here really is that how can we make routine less boring so that we can actually do it consistently, and it's going to help to benefit us, you know, in terms of our health. There could also be a case where you are really bringing your skills to work here. Your skills are becoming genius, you know, and they may even contribute to some kind of invention or creative thinking. So for Capricorn rising, we have Uranus moving into your 5th house. It could also be your 4th house if you're born at later degrees of Capricorn rising, so you want to check your natal chart to see where that is. The 5th house is a house of romance, hobbies, your expression, pleasure, It's kind of funny to have Uranus moving into this house because it really makes you rebellious when it comes to, and kind of going against the society when it comes to the idea of repressing pleasure. So you see society as repressing people's pleasures in some ways. Yeah, you can view that the society is repressing pleasure so that everybody can be responsible, you know, do their work. So you can kind of want to go against that a little bit, and it can lead to you getting a bit of trouble. For example, you might, you know, be dating multiple people, or you might be jumping from one romantic relationship to another, or just having too much fun and getting in trouble for it. So the lesson here is that what is the price that we're willing to pay in order to express ourselves fully? Or what is the price that we're willing to what's the price that we're willing to pay to have to suppress our pleasures in order to be responsible? It can go either way. However, the outlet for this is, instead of just having too much fun, it would be a good idea to use Uranus's brilliance and genius and put that into a hobby or into a creative work, because it's going to come out pretty genius. And you got to remember that creation, when it's done from the higher self, is just limitless, and it's going to be beautiful. So for Aquarius rising, we have Uranus going into your 4th house, or it could be your 3rd house if you're born at later degrees of Aquarius rising. So you want to check your natal chart just to see where Uranus is moving. So the 4th house is the house of the home, family, roots, and it's also an unconscious house. It's about your unconscious need for safety and stability. The theme here is really, it's time to move away from your family home, because when you have ties with your family, sometimes it's hard for us to be our individual selves and to find out who we really are. You know, it's a pretty typical theme. I gotta move away from my family to find out who I really am. But you're gonna have to do it in a Taurus way, because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, so you're gonna have to take the relation, you know, you have to be considerate about your relationships with the people, make sure that you get them on board with what you're doing, and you're gonna have to not force it, but let it flow with the natural flow. So what you're actually doing here is you're trying to align your inner self with the outer world. So you're just trying to find your place in the world, and try to be more comfortable with your place in the world. The 4th house is quite similar to the 8th house and the 12th house, because it's all about intimacy and the unconscious. So if there is some kind of unconscious, repressed unconscious urges that want to come up, has to do with intimacy, feeling safe and comfortable, then you're gonna have to go for it. It's a good time to be doing that. So last but not least, the Pisces rising. Uranus is going to be moving into your 3rd house. It could also be moving into your 2nd house if you're born at later degrees, Pisces rising. So the 3rd house is about communications, relatives, the lower mind, information, and, you know, your nearby surrounding environment. So because the 3rd house is the house of the lower mind, it's the house of your cognitive processes, you're gonna really see a drastic change in the way that you think about things. So you can kind of have different perspectives on things, but not in a 9th house large perspective. It's more of like how your mind is working. It's gonna work differently. So your perception of reality, your perception of your environment can change, however way that may be. The way that you used to think about something is not going to be the same after the 7 to 8 year transit. You are going to be, and this can be almost genius, you know, but you also want to express this to the world, but what you want to do with this transit is to hold it back for a minute. Be careful. You could, because Uranus is so sudden, you might just burst out saying things to people and it comes out the wrong way, or people are just not ready to accept what you're about to say. So you might want to write it down first, make notes until you have formulated your words a little more beautifully, diplomatically, and then you might want to express this new sudden realization of reality that you've had. So that is all. That is Uranus transiting the houses for each of the rising signs. So I'd like to hear your experience on this. You know, what have you been feeling this Uranus energy in certain aspects of your lives? I'd love to know. Leave them in the comments below. That's all for today, guys. I'll see you very soon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please hit the subscribe button below. If you're already subscribed, then thank you very much for coming along with me on these astrology journeys, growing together every day. Bye!